Hello everybody, and welcome to episode number 5 of the Lighting Lounge. I realized last week we didn't introduce ourselves, so I'm John Michael, and over on that side of me is Aid. We just assume the whole internet knows us, so here we are.
Yeah. I once published a zine without putting my name on it, so go figure, you know, like, or at least not on the front anyway. It may have been on the back page or something like that, so I just completely forgot about it. So.
Yeah. We once did a flyer for our Tango Association and put all the dates and everything, but we forgot to put like the address or what city we were in or anything. So it was like, oh, great. Where do we find you? Nowhere.
At least you know the people that turn up are really interested.
They were really dedicated. Yep. Yeah. So we're here to record another show and talk about lighting. And this week you suggested that we talk about a couple of the pictures that I took. So
yes,
that's what we're going to do. Because
that's what we're going to do now. I'm going to act as inquisitor because I love the stuff that you do, and I think we're going to do a bit of a lighting breakdown this week on a couple of images. So you graciously agreed to this and suggested that I choose a couple of images from your website, which I duly did. And so yeah, we're going to have a chat around those. We'll make sure they're available in the Discord for anybody that wants to have a look at them as we go along, and of course they'll be on the YouTube video for anybody watching.
Yep. Yeah. Last time we didn't have any images to talk about, so there was nothing to see. But this week there will be a couple of images. So I'm going to try and click some buttons here and pull up the first image.
There we go. Yes, I can see that.
That actually worked. And why don't you go ahead and explain it at least a bit for the people listening?
Okay, so, well, for a little bit of context, you have a series of images on your website that are called elements. And I looked at the element of fire, and I thought, oh, there's lots of stuff I'd like to talk about with the way that you've made these images. So what we have here is a young lady, a model, who is representing the element of fire. And she is wearing a red dress. She has red hair, and there's a lot of red light going on. And she has some quite cool makeup on as well. Actually, clearly a talented makeup artist involved in this shot. And she's also sporting a rather fancy-looking necklace. Is that one of yours?
Yeah, that's one of mine.
Ah, right. So, and a ring on her hand, I should say, as well, because she's holding her hand up, and she has are those matching pieces that you've made?
Yeah. So the idea,
nice.
The idea behind these element series was a few years ago. We had a bit of free time in the shop, and I spoke with my then boss, and I said, well, what if we did a series with these 4 elements, and we made jewelry pieces kind of, inspired by those elements. And then we did a photo shoot to, display them, showcase them. And we got involved with a lovely hair artist and a makeup artist. And we kind of, made this collaborative team to, to make it happen, because I said I can't do makeup, I can't do hair, but Marcel's a great makeup artist, and we actually had a new makeup artist for this one, Selima, and then find a model and all that, and yeah, so it's a really fun collaboration. We've done 3 so far. We started with earth, and then we did water, and the most recent one was fire, and air is to be determined. We'll see when that happens.
Yeah. No, so I really like this. So there's different lighting techniques as far as I can see. But I'm in. So the lighting on the model, the key light seems to be it's a little bit difficult to say whether it's a soft or a hard. There's kind of a hard light just defining her jawline, a harder shadow. There's definitely something, or looks like it's coming in from left of picture, that's lighting up the line of her shoulder, and no doubt providing some fill as well there into that side, the right hand side of her head and her hair. And then there is a really nice lighting effect. And I'm intrigued by it. I have to say, I'm not going to make any supposition about how it's been created, because I'm going to let you describe that. That it is the graphical representation, as I interpret it anyway, of the fire element. I assume that's what it's supposed to be. I probably shouldn't make an assumption, but that was my interpretation.
Yeah, that's the idea.
So I think I can see that perhaps there's at least 2 lights involved in this. I think is my guess. The key light and the whether you call it an edge light or whatever, that's coming from behind her on her shoulder, just off the camera left. And I'm intrigued as to what else there might be. So.
Okay.
So tell me, am I anywhere near what you've achieved there technically, or am I just talking nonsense?
Yeah, no, you're definitely on the right track. So I think there was a total of 4 or 5 lights for this one.
Oh, okay.
The main light, you were right on. It's a gridded a gridded octabox that's slightly above and to the left of camera. So that's kind of illuminating what we see of the left of her. I always get confused when people say camera left and camera right. I never know what that means, but it's when I'm looking at the picture, it's the left-hand side.
Yes.
And I believe that I can actually even do some pointing here. For those who are watching the video, you might be able to see a little cursor there. So that's also where this shadow under her jaw is coming from, is from that that octabox that's kind of slightly above and to the left of my camera, pointing just a bit down onto her. And then behind her on the left of camera, there's a flash kind of pointed down at the back of her head that is giving that little edge light and lighting up the back of her hair, giving a little bit of separation on that side.
And she has got fiery red hair, so that's important.
There's actually
part of the composition
one
as well.
from the... Go ahead.
I said she also has fiery red hair, right? So it's important for the composition as well.
Yeah. Well, we did choose a model with red hair because that seemed to fit the theme. And then, so the third light is coming from the right of camera, and that's just a little bare bulb that's kind of popping a bit of light onto the necklace and onto her face. It was just a bit too dark. I'm going to go ahead and switch to one of the kind of test exposures for this image, and this one is just the back light. It's the edge light kind of behind her.
Okay.
And I think we even had like a slightly red or purplish gel on that one, just to give it a bit of a purple tint, at least in the test exposure we did. I think at the end, it's been a while and I don't remember exactly, but I think we took the gel off then for the final image. And when I go to the next image, you can maybe see why. And that's, you can see that the dress she's wearing is not actually red, it's purple.
Ah, yes.
So that's why we were kind of playing with that purplish hair light to see if that worked out well or not. So this is the first 2 lights. So you've got the key light, which is coming from the octabox, kind of lighting up her front, and then the hair light on the back. But as you can see, that kind of her chest and the necklace area, and the eye that's further away from camera is all still pretty dark.
Yeah, there's no light on those at all, is there? So yes, I can see how you'd have had to build that up.
Yeah. So the next light that came into play was a constant light, and that's actually the light that's lighting me up right now. It's a newer LED RGB panel, so you can adjust different colors, and you can see that here. This is a behind the scenes shot of Marcel, the hair stylist, kind of getting in there and fixing something or other. So the light behind him is this LED panel, which is lighting up that back side of her that was not being illuminated by the flash.
Yeah, we probably should have said before we started that actually the key light is what you'd call a broad light, because it's lighting the more side of her face. We can see. So a broad light is where you light the bigger portion of the subject's face that you can see. A short light would be the opposite, where you're lighting the side that you see less of.
Yeah. She's in a slight profile, so there's that kind of the front side that's being illuminated by the flash, and then the short side is being illuminated by the constant light. And if you look very closely under Marcel's elbow, you can see a little light stand poking up there, and I think that one is pointing at the background, just to give a bit of color to that background, which is it's a red velvet, which absorbed light like crazy. You have to put a whole lot of light on that, otherwise it just looks black. So
I can imagine.
In some of the other shots, I was using like 2 or 3 flashes at full power just to get it up to some kind of reasonable exposure. So now we've got the hair light, we've got the key light on her, and then we've got the constant light, and then back behind Marcel here is the last kind of bare bulb flash, which was just adding that little pop of fill light, I guess, kind of to illuminate the necklace, and also to get a little bit of sparkle on the makeup that Selima did, because she used like a sparkly, like gold glitter on the lips, and kind of as a stripe, almost like a kiss style stripe down through the eyes. And so that glitter adds quite a bit to the image.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's fascinating, actually. So there's lots and lots going on there, and I'm just looking to try and think through all the things. Now we're looking back at the final shot, just looking and thinking, okay, well, can I see all of those things in the impact? And I can definitely see the impact on her hair and on her shoulder again. It does look a little bit purple, but maybe that's just compared to the rest of the colour rather than being gelled, because it's not that far off. And yes, you can see, now I understand it, you can see definitely the difference the lighting to the short side of the model's face is making, and the lighting of the jewellery piece around her neck as well is definitely you can see how that's compiled together now. So how did you? So really interesting thing. Thank you. How did you create the fire effect? Then is that done in lighting, or is that an after effect achieved in post? How did that work?
So the reason that I used a combination of constant lighting and flash was to get that effect. So this was actually shot at f8 at 1/3 of a second. So it's a fairly long exposure time. And so the idea behind a shot like this is that the flash will freeze the image. It will freeze the model. And then I can... anything can move then. The model can move. In this case, the camera was moving. So I would be kind of panning the camera while I was taking the shot. So I would, be moving the camera. I think, I always get it backwards, but I think I was moving from the top right down towards the left at kind of a diagonal. And, and as I was doing that, then at some point I would hit the shutter, and so it would open, the flash would go off, and then I would continue moving. And because I'm not perfectly stable, and you get some kind of interesting ripples and movement effects. And
very nice. So that's quite technical, very very accomplished.
Well,
and so you've got there then I can see now. Now you've explained it, and you've just zoomed in on the picture in the video, so I can see it much closer. And yes, you can see the effect of dragging the shutter on. Yeah, that you've got a little trail of the glittery makeup under her eye. I hadn't spotted that when I was just looking at the whole image. So the zoom in is good. Thank you. So okay, so this is effectively then. Wow. So that was going to be my next question. Actually, was about why are you, or how and why are you blending the flash light, which of course would be very, very bright, with the continuous light. But of course now I know why, because you were using it for the lighting effect. That's very clever. Yes.
It's basically a combination of two different exposures. So I've got the very short exposure time of the flash, determined by the duration of the flash, which we talked about last week, is very short. And then we've got the long exposure of the LED light, which has much less power, but is continuous. So that's filling that whole third of a second.
Yes.
And giving me a chance to move to give these kind of streaky effects.
Okay, so you would ask that, yes, and I can see, now we're zoomed in again as well. I can see around the edges of the model's face where there's a little bit of motion blur around the edges of her face there as well, which I wouldn't have noticed in a smaller version of the image. So that's fascinating. Yeah, as I say, very, very accomplished. What gave you the idea to do that?
I stole it from somewhere. I don't remember where. Excellent. But I think this was actually a technique that was fairly common, like in the 80s or the 90s. Kind of, fashion work, using flash and continuous light in combination and dragging the shutter. And I stumbled across it somewhere, and I remember thinking like, oh, that looks like fire. That's very cool. Mm-hmm. And actually, now I remember, it was a fellow named Jake Hicks, who is a British photographer, and he does, or he does a lot of this kind of, exactly this technique with models and flash in combination with continuous lights. So look up Jake Hicks if you wanna know more.
Cool, very interesting. That's yes. I'm glad I chose this one. Now I've learnt a lot.
Yeah. I'll pull up. So this is just another pose of the same image. But you can see that depending on how I move the camera, the kind of the streaking effect will go in different directions.
So this is very interesting, and it has a different impression. It makes a different impression on me, albeit that technically it's the same lighting effect. So in this one, the model's hair is much more lit, as if with a bright white light, and the it feels as if the movement you did is. It's clearly impacted her face more than anything else, but it feels a little bit, dare I say it, a little bit more obvious. I'm not sure that I would have got it. It's easy to say, it's slightly easier to interpret once you've been told the secret, right? So I'm not saying that, but it's got a whole Ziggy Stardust thing about it as well, this picture actually. So.
We tried it with a starburst filter as well, but that was just too much. So had to draw the line somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. So okay. So for those, let's have a bit of a recap then, because we've dived into this. I'm conscious we used at least one term that maybe not everybody knows, because we've been talking, and I forgive me, it's me that brought it up, about dragging the shutter. Mm-hmm. We should probably explain that dragging the shutter is where you are shooting with a longer shutter speed, or the shutter open for longer than is necessary. It's often used in flash photography, because you can, with the burst of the flash, freeze the subject, so you can get some nice effect if you have the shutter open for longer, as it is that we're seeing in these images.
So,
So that's at least one, well, at least one term we use that possibly benefits from a little bit of definition.
yeah. We also talked about short light and broad light, which we briefly discussed. The broad light being where the more of the face is lit, and short light is where less of the face is lit.
Yes, which is a combination of the angle that the subject's face has towards your camera or relative to your camera. So in a situation where you can see that the camera or the model is not looking straight at the camera, and therefore you can see more of one side of the model's face than the other. The one that, if you light the side that you can see more of, that's broad lighting, so called, because you're lighting more, and short lighting is where you're lighting less, which is often slightly it's often a little bit more dramatic. Short lighting, it's often slightly harder to set up because you are working with acute angles rather than broad angles, and to get the light just right, to light the model in the right way and still have sufficient of that to come back towards the camera, even though what you're trying to do is to limit the light that comes back towards the camera. I don't know about you anyway, I often find that quite challenging.
Yeah, you got to find the right place, and a few centimeters can make a big difference when you're doing with something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, brilliant. Okay.
I can pull up, I have here, this is the unedited version of the frame.
Okay.
So you can see that that's the effect kind of straight out of camera. This one, I did not shoot these on film. These are digital images, but I have played with this technique on digital though, and it is a fun thing. Not on film.
On film, yeah.
I actually shot some expired slide film doing this, and that was kind of fun.
Oh wow! Okay.
So I'll just switch back and forth a couple times here, so you can kind of see the difference.
Yes. So I can see going back to in the unedited shot, her dress is clearly purple, for example, and actually it's been color matched to be much closer to the red in the edited shot. So yeah, that's good. I like it. Yeah, very impressive. I like that. Like that a lot. Did it sell lots of jewelry?
Yeah. Yeah, well, it is the most expensive set in the shop now, so it's still sitting there waiting for its final home. Let's see. Anything else you wanted to know about this one?
I don't think so. No, I think that I know there should be nuances and subtleties that I should be picking up on, but possibly I haven't. But thank you. No, that's been really interesting to see that. And of course, now you've explained it all, I can see the things that are there, and maybe I can look out for those light trails and things like that in the future to figure out that. But that is a very effective way of shooting, and I like it a lot.
Cool. All right, well then I'll pull up the next one that you picked out, and there it is.
Yes. So from the same series, this is a more moody shot. I think so. So this time the model has a much more severe hairstyle and different makeup. She again is wearing a lovely piece of jewellery, and she's carrying 2 fire sticks, one in each hand, which look like the sort of things jugglers use, or fire, or what do they call them? Fire breathing acts, use to light the fire and then do whatever they do with those sorts of things. So she's got sort of slightly reminiscent of an early Annie Lennox, with ginger hair, pulled back tight, and a jacket that's slightly too big for her, like a suit jacket that looks like it might be slightly too big for her. It reminds me of an early Eurythmics video, I think, in terms of that. But it's definitely got a pretty, you wouldn't mess with her kind of vibe, and that I think is helped by the lighting. So I'm going to take a punt here and say that there's some fairly white lights coming from each side of her. So lighting up the sides of her face rather than the front of it. And because she has great cheekbones, it provides a large amount of definition in her face. And it's a style that I've seen used in this kind of to create this kind of look in a fashion sense, but it's also used quite a lot with photographs of athletes, I think, because it's one of this side lighting makes them look all chiseled and brings out the definition in their physique. So it's one that's used with athletes, and so I'm going to say that here there's a light from either side. I think there's going to you're also going to tell me there's something that is a fill, but it's probably just above the camera pointing down towards her. And that's what's providing the better ability, the lightiness on frontally on her face and on the jewelry itself, because there's I don't know anything about jewelry. I think that I'd say it's amber because the stone is orange, but that's about as far as my jewelry knowledge goes. It's probably nothing of the sort. But I'm guessing, and it is a bit of a guess, but there's something that you've used to light her and the jewelry, her face and the jewelry. And then in the background, that big red velvet curtain that you were talking about, it feels that is I'm going to take a guess and say that there is a light behind her that's pointed slightly upwards, because if I look at the shadows on that curtain, it looks like it's projecting, the light is projecting upwards at the curtain, but the curtain is, I don't know what the gathered in a way, so it's not just a flat curtain, it's a gathered piece of cloth. So I'm going to say that the light is behind her, possibly on a stand pointing upwards, and that's providing the colour in the background. That's probably about as much as I'm prepared to guess.
Oh, that's all really good detective work there. That's pretty much what it was.
Cool.
Yeah. So on as we look at her left side is a bit more illuminated than the right side. There's just kind of a couple of, like, her jawbone, and on this under her eye there's a bit of a light kind of triangle on her cheekbone there, and a little point on her forehead on the right side of the image. The left side, kind of the whole edge of her face and going down her neck, is all illuminated. So there's a strip light on the left hand side of her.
Right. Okay.
Or our left pointing at her.
Yeah.
And that kind of fills that whole, from the top of her head kind of down to her elbow, is all being illuminated by that strip light. It's slightly behind her, facing slightly towards us. So it's kind of an angle.
Yep.
So that it doesn't get too far around onto her face. I wanted to keep kind of the middle of her face a bit darker, so that it didn't get too flattering, too beauty-like, I guess. If the lights come around too much to the front, then it starts to, just to look a bit too bright and happy, and that's not the mood that we were kind of going for in this shot. This is kind of a don't mess with me kind of a look. And
you nailed that. Don't mess with me kind of. I wouldn't mess with her. She looks like she looks like she doesn't take any nonsense.
Yeah, and so that's why I was trying to keep the front of her face kind of a bit darker and in shadow. And I don't remember what modifier it was, but I had a light slightly above camera pointing down, but either flagged or with a grid. It was either a little beauty dish that was pointed down so that it wasn't hitting her face, but I probably used what's it called? It's a snoot with a grid, or not a snoot, but it's a it's a light bender from Rogue, and it's like a little tube, and then there's a round grid attachment that goes on the front of that, and you can control kind of how wide that point of light, or that circle of light, is going to be.
Yeah.
And you can kind of just direct it to not hit her face, but to kind of just catch the bottom of her chin. I think that little highlight on her chin is probably coming from that, and then go down and light up the necklace and kind of her chest area, and fill that shadow that otherwise wouldn't be hit by the lights behind her. And she's definitely standing directly in front of another light that is pointed at the background to light the background up. And so this, I'll pull up now here, kind of a behind the scenes image. This is my former boss filling in as we're...
Great beard.
Oh yeah, he's got a great beard.
For people just listening, he looks very much like Gandalf.
Yeah. So on the left of the frame, you can see the strip light going off, and to the right, there's it's my little foldable beauty dish, which I think for the final shot, I took off the beauty dish and just used a bare bulb on that side to get an even harder light. And one of my concerns was that the flash would be too bright and kind of overpower the fire. So while Julia was getting her makeup done, Marcus and I were kind of experimenting with different exposures to figure out, what kind of an exposure I would need to get the flame to show up as fire without, just totally overpowering it with the flash.
That was going to be a question of mine, actually. So as you say, from the side, you've used a continuous light. Or is it not a continuous?
No,
light?
This is only flash.
Okay, so sorry, you when you said strip light, I had made an assumption it was a continuous light. So actually, what you've been able to do there then is very impressive, because that flash would have been quite, clearly very bright, obviously. So are you shooting at quite a small aperture then to constrain the amount of flash that gets into the sensor, but with a longer shutter speed so that the fire can be properly exposed?
It was 100th of a second at f9.
Oh, okay, all right.
So I was also pleasantly surprised at how bright those flames were.
Yeah, very.
Yeah, I also thought I'm gonna have to do a long exposure to get these flames to show up, but they were bright.
Okay, that's really interesting that the flame could be as bright as that then to show up at f9 at 100th of a second. That's not a massive exposure, is it, for light? So yeah.
No, but it's also when I was talking about the lights, I completely forgot those flames are also lighting her. So her face is also slightly illuminated by these flames, which are significant. They're probably 40 centimeters tall. They're 1.5 feet tall. Those flames, so they're. That's
a very good point. I should have mentioned that actually, but it didn't occur to me. I guess that's what in the movies they'd call practicals. Although I think where a practical is a name given to a light that's part of the set, right? But that and appears on the camera, and either does or doesn't have an actual lighting function. Although I would say that probably two sticks that are burning with fire 40 centimeters high are not particularly practical in the general usage of the word practical.
Nope. That was one of the challenges with this particular shot. I looked from the first image until the flames were out. It was less than 4 minutes.
Wow. Okay.
So we got everything set up as best we could, and then we lit it and just went for it, and had those 3.5 or 4 minutes to try different things, and then fire was out.
Well done then. Yeah, to that. Yeah, that sort of timing, because these things can. I mean, you when you do these lighting setups and these builds of light, I mean, you can take an hour, half an hour to an hour just to get the background lights the way you want them, can't you? Before you start doing anything else. So that's. Did you have to do a lot of prep work for that, or did you do a lot of test shots without the fire? And
we did quite a few. Yeah. We kind of got everything as dialed in as we could. Just with her in place, first with Marcos kind of filling in to get it roughed in, and then we got her in place and, kind of tweaked things a little bit more. But I still, once the flames were lit, I remember I had to change my exposure. I think I had to drop some, upward, raise or lower some flash power to kind of compensate for the flames then, and adjust a few things from there. So.
Yeah, cool. I really like it. Yes, excellent. And just and there's smoke in the picture as well. I think I saw your colleague there with a can of atmosphere spray or something like that. I'm hoping not all of that smoke is coming directly from the flames, although I guess some of it could be.
Some of it, the smoke in front is coming from the flames. The smoke kind of behind her is him, shooting some of the smoke into the kind of in front of the strip light to try and catch a bit of that. When we blew out the torches that she's holding, then there was a whole bunch of smoke everywhere, and I was like, wow, that's a way to do it. Okay, but didn't quite work out. So, yes.
Ah, excellent. Love these things. Yeah, love these photos. Fantastic work.
Let's see. Here's a shot of this is kind of one of the preparation shots without the fire lit. And this is again me. What I like to do is kind of dial in one light at a time. So you turn off all the other lights except for the one you're trying to adjust. And so this is the strip light off to the left of camera. And so you take a shot, see what it looks like, get that the way you want it, and then turn that one off and start adjusting the other lights.
And have you got your camera locked down on a tripod at this point so that you're not having to worry about composing so much? You're just, you've got the camera where you want it, it'll stay where you put it, and you can just concentrate on the lighting?
I think for this one I had it on a tripod, yeah. Not 100% sure, but I think I did, just to have that kind of, have the framing not moving around on me all the time.
Yeah. So that's the one side, and I can see, yes, I mean, it's very clear when you have it just the one side, isn't it? You can see it's edging her jacket, and of course it's got the other side of her face and things like that, and down her neck is all coming from that edge light.
All right. Then I would go to the next image. That's that one.
Yeah, so this one is really caught my eye. So this is a lovely piece of jewelry, but not being worn by a model. This is a product shot, right? So you've got some fantastic lighting on the piece itself. I'm guessing it's gold, with stone, and it's stones in it, so it's 3 pendants attached to a necklace, I think. Is that a good terminology?
It's earrings and a necklace.
Oh, it's earrings and a necklace. Oh, I see. Ah, yes, because I see one of them isn't quite attached to the necklace, is it? So floating. Suspended, floating there. Ah, right. So matching earrings to go with the necklace. Yeah, beautiful. And then there's a red textured background. So this one, I thought, well, this is really intriguing, because I thought, how is it that this is something I don't have any experience with? So there's light that looks like it must be pretty much on axis with the camera, because it seems to be reflecting back at the camera quite linearly, if that's the right word. So I want to say there's an element of the lighting here that is shooting at the piece, but then this is the one that really got me, because of course the stones have many facets, and I was looking at this and thinking, okay, so you can have a look and you can sort of see, okay, if there's a bounce of the light from over there, and then there's a bounce of light from over there, because of course all of it, and it's all coming off the facets of the stones, which I think is fantastic. So I'm looking, and that made me think that actually there must be a light off to the left, still I think in front of the jewellery rather than behind it, because I'm seeing what I think is the specular highlight, if that's the right term, of the flash on a facet of the gem that is pointing towards me. So I'm thinking maybe it's not entirely, full on frontal as if it were on top of the camera, but maybe it's a light either side but in front of, and so that's what's making those facets of the stones reflect in the way they do. But that's about as far as I got with this one. Oh no, hang on. Sorry. I was thinking about the background as well. So the background is a red texture. So my initial thought was it was some kind of cloth that was also being independently lit somehow to give it the right exposure and colour that you were after. So that's how far I got on this one. I don't know if any of that's correct.
Yeah. So it's the same background that we used for the portraits as the background. So it's this kind of red velvet, and it shows up as a bit more of an intense red in these images than it does in the others. But my master plan is to make kind of a photo album out of all these, at the end. So you've got the picture of the model and the picture of the jewelry, with kind of a uniform background all together. So that's the idea. We'll see when we're all done. Mm-hmm. So this I did on my kitchen table, and I set up the velvet kind of draped over a little box or a stool or something, just so that it was fairly far away from the jewelry. It's probably 80 centimeters or a meter away from the jewelry, so there's a bit of distance between the jewelry hanging there and the background,
which would be necessary, I guess, for the light to fall off so it can be darker than the pieces.
Yeah, it gives it a bit of separation, and it also gives you a bit of depth of field too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the jewelry is just the pendant is hanging from its chain, which I've clipped to something or other so that it's just hanging there, and then the earrings are actually hanging upside down by their stand.
You've gone to the before shot. Ah, right, I see.
So I just had a kind of a little display stand upside down clipped or something, just so that they're kind of in the right orientation.
They're hanging there, and then you've removed that.
I removed the
in
stand.
Editing.
In post, I got rid of the stand, which was not as trivial as I expected it to be, but oh well, that's how these things go. So the lighting for the jewelry was mostly done by two umbrellas, and these are just your most basic shoot-through umbrellas, and I had them kind of set up so that there was a bit of an upside down V where I could poke the lens through. So the two umbrellas were very close together, pointing towards the jewelry, and the lens was just kind of poking through a little slit in between the two of them. And so that gives you a lot of light kind of coming from everywhere. Kind of a half globe near the camera is all just blasting at the jewelry. And because because it's gold and polished, it reflects, and it's lots of round things. So there's always, that's the the joy and the torment of photographing jewelry, especially polished jewelry, is there's always something that's shiny that's pointed at the camera and is going to reflect you or your lens or whatever. So I'm sure if you
I've had this with some of the craft store stuff that I've been doing recently with my wife, because some of the stuff she's made is on acrylic.
Oh yeah.
And it's just like, photographing acrylic is really hard.
Yeah. So you'll end up with all kinds of funny artifacts, and there's always like a black point somewhere or other that's the lens reflecting in the jewelry.
Yeah.
So those
very nice.
Those two umbrellas are lighting the jewelry and the background. And then what I like to do is I take a third flash. I think for this one I also had a bare flash kind of behind the jewelry, pointed down at the background, just to give it a bit more light coming from up, behind the jewelry, but just down onto the background to light it up a bit more, because as I mentioned before, that velvet just eats up all the light.
Yeah.
I think when you want a pure black background, they usually sell you black velvet for exactly that reason, because it just absorbs everything and doesn't reflect it.
Yeah.
And then what I like to do is I'll have everything kind of dialed in. I've got my camera on a tripod, and then I use a remote, and I take an extra flash in my hand, and I kind of move it over the jewelry coming down from the top, and just, you know, do kind of an orbit around the jewelry, popping off frames to see what position that flash kind of coming from above. That will often give you some nice kind of highlights, or light up the stones a bit, or give you a nice little reflection here or there, just to add kind of a little highlight somewhere.
Yeah. Okay. No, and that's well, it's a trial and error process, I guess, isn't it? Just to see what's effective. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Really cool. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah.
If you were doing it with continuous light, you know, you could kind of slowly move that and see where, you know, what the right spot is.
Yes.
But exactly, when you're doing it with flash, then you just kind of have to, you know, try and see what works.
Yes. No, well, it's very effective. I love it. It's I can imagine with all of those faces on the jewels themselves, and all of the curvature on the gold work. Yeah, that's. I can imagine that could get quite challenging quite quickly.
Well, and I mean, if you're trying to get exactly that particular facet to shine, then you're going to have a lot of work to do. But for this kind of thing, it's not too bad. You know, you take a few images and you go, oh, that one looks nice. Here, the facet's lighting up nicely over here. Okay, you know, we can take that one.
Oh, fair enough then. Fair enough. Cool. Excellent. Well, this has been really, really interesting. Thank you very much for indulging me with my questions about these 3 photos. Yeah, fascinating. Gives me lots to think about. I hope everybody who's listening to this actually gets a chance to either see on the Discord the images that we're talking about, or really, if you can, to watch it on YouTube. This is one of those ones that definitely is a visual podcast, isn't it, today?
Yeah, or at least after you've listened to it, go and take a look at the images so you know what we're talking about. Yeah,
that's true. Yes, true. So, yeah. Fascinating stuff, and I get to have a good look at all your jewelry as well, which is awesome too.
Yep, this is kind of that was one of the reasons why I wanted to do it. It's a combination of two of my life things, so always nice.
I'll tell you what we should put in right, because this is your podcast, right? So we can do whatever we want, right? Let's make sure we put a link into your business, your jewelry, into the show notes as well, because I think there's some fantastic stuff here. So yeah. I'm sure there would be people in our audience who would be equally as fascinated by it as I am, and who knows what might happen.
Yeah. Well, we should put a link to Julia as well, who was the model for the first 2 images. She did a lovely job with that. That was really nice. It's it's fun. I'll pull up. I've got a picture here. This is the team that made the crew, those
5 of you.
Yeah, that was the 5 of us, and it was I think it was 6 or 7 hours we spent doing 5 looks. So there's 5 jewelry pieces, 5 outfits, 5 hairstyles, 5 makeups, and 5 photos. So
it's when you're doing stuff to this standard, it's a team effort, and it's a big effort as well, isn't it? So yeah, very impressive.
It's always great to get other creative people involved. So and just you know, Markus was there, and he was watching out for the things that I wasn't seeing. So, you know, it's always great to have an extra set of eyes there. You know, he would say like, wait, you know, the necklace is turned the wrong way, or wait, this is that, or, you know, and Marcel, the hairdresser, would be like, okay, stop, I got to adjust the hair. And Selima would come in and do something with the makeup. And so it's really lovely having multiple eyes looking at what you're doing. So you can kind of, because you always miss something.
Oh yeah. It's input. You can't see everything.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay. Well, thank you ever so much. I think, really fascinating stuff. Yeah, I look forward to having further discussions like this in the future.
Yeah, well, we'll have to talk about some of the pictures that you did next time and see how that goes.
Well, absolutely, yeah, very happy to do that. I'd have to, yeah, I need to dig. I need to dig down into that. I don't think much of the product photography that I'm doing at the moment is really, there's much to discuss, so, because it's a question of making a very even light that lights everything in the same way, because that's the style that's required. So it's basically sort of one big octabox, above everything, and lighting everything as evenly as possible. So, but I can definitely dig out some other work that I've done, and we can talk through stuff like that. So sadly, that's going to be a little while away though.
Yeah, you're heading out for a bit now, I think. So
I am, yes. So I'm about to embark on a trip that my wife and I have talked about for many years, which is to visit Canada and to tour around Canada a bit. So very excited about that. But it does mean that I'm not going to be around for a little while to make any more podcasts. So yeah, it's going to be late summer, autumn time by the time we get to chat again, I suspect. By the time I'm back and recovered whatever is left of my career, because I've had too long off work.
yeah, getting back to work after a long break is always difficult.
It's a bit of a luxury though, isn't it? Yeah, so I'm very, very pleased. I'm trying not to call this a trip of a lifetime, because I'd like to think I could do something like it again in the future, but it is definitely something we've talked about for years and finally got around to planning, so really exciting. I will yes, I'll be back with some photos from that, no doubt. I've got a couple of ideas for creative projects that I can do whilst I'm away, and whether they'll be completed whilst I'm away, or whether they'll be do the shooting whilst I'm away and then complete them when I get back. I'm not sure yet. See how it pans out. See how much fun I'm having, I guess.
Well, we'll look forward to hearing about that, I guess, when you're back, and I'm sure you'll talk about that on the main show as well. So look forward to hearing about it.
I'll talk about it. I will talk about it for as long as I can, as long as people will let me get away with it wherever possible. So yeah, there'll definitely be lots of that.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess we're gonna call it an evening for this show, and we're coming in under an hour, I think, for the first time in this run of the show. So that's something. And yeah, look for the images on Discord. We'll put links to everything in the show notes. And until next time, when you're back home, everybody have a wonderful summer, and we'll talk to you in a while.
Yeah, take care, folks. Speak soon.
Bye-bye.